What if I told you that the simple act of flipping a light switch, something you've probably done a dozen times today, was once at the center of one of the most ruthless business wars in American history? That the warm glow of a light bulb, which we barely notice anymore, was fought over by some of the most powerful men of their time, with courtrooms as their battlefields and patents as their weapons. It's a story most people have never heard. But it changed everything about the world we live in today. Let's go back to a time when darkness was simply a fact of life. Picture America in the 1870s. When the sun set, cities didn't glow the way they do now. There were no street lights humming on every corner, no shop windows glowing late into the evening. After sunset, most people relied on candles, oil lamps, or if they were fortunate, gaslight. Gaslight was the best you could get back then. It flickered, it smelled, and if something went wrong, a leak, a broken pipe, it could kill you. But it was progress. It was modern. And the companies that controlled gaslighting? They were powerful. Very powerful. Into this world stepped a young man with an idea that seemed almost magical. His name was Thomas Edison. Now, you know that name, of course. Everyone does. Edison is the man we think of when we imagine the light bulb. The lone genius in his laboratory, working late into the night until, click, the bulb lights up, and the world changes forever. But here's the thing about that story, it's not quite true. Oh, Edison did create a practical, long-lasting light bulb. That part is real. But he didn't invent the idea. Not even close. By the time Edison started working on electric light in 1878, dozens of inventors around the world had already been trying to make it work for decades. There was Joseph Swan in England, Hiram Maxim, William Sawyer, Heinrich Goebel, all of them tinkering, experimenting, trying to make a filament, a thin wire inside a glass bulb, glow without burning out in seconds. Edison's genius wasn't in being first. It was in being relentless. He tested thousands of materials for that filament. Bamboo, carbonized thread, platinum. He worked his team around the clock, sometimes sleeping in the lab, obsessed with making a bulb that would last longer than a few hours. And in 1879, he did it. A bulb that could burn for more than 1,200 hours. But Edison understood something else, too, something that the other inventors didn't quite grasp. He knew that inventing the light bulb wasn't enough. You also had to invent the system, the power stations, the wiring, the sockets, the switches, everything. And if you controlled that system, you controlled the future. So Edison didn't just build a better bulb. He built an empire. Now, you might think that would be the end of the story. Brilliant inventor creates the light bulb, the world celebrates, everyone lives happily ever after in well-lit rooms. But that's not what happened. Because the moment Edison's light bulb started glowing in homes and streets across America, the war began. And it wasn't a war fought with armies or guns. It was fought with lawyers, patents, and money. Lots of money. Let me introduce you to a man named George Westinghouse. Westinghouse was a different kind of genius. Where Edison was the obsessive tinkerer, Westinghouse was the engineer and businessman. He'd already made a fortune with his air brake system for trains, something that saved countless lives and made rail travel safer. But in the mid-1880s, Westinghouse saw the future in electricity just like Edison did. The difference was, he believed in a different kind of electricity. You see, Edison's system used something called direct current, or DC. It was safe, reliable, and it worked. But it had one big problem, you couldn't send it very far. A DC power station could only light up buildings within about a mile. If you wanted to power a whole city, you'd need dozens, maybe hundreds, of power stations. It was expensive, inefficient. Westinghouse believed in something else, alternating current. AC. AC could travel long distances. You could build one power station outside of town and send electricity dozens of miles away. It was cheaper, more practical. The future. But there was a problem. Edison hated AC. He thought it was dangerous. And maybe he was right to worry. AC used higher voltages, and if something went wrong, it could kill you faster than DC. Or maybe, and I think this is closer to the truth, Edison hated AC because he'd already invested everything into DC. His reputation, his company, his fortune. If AC won, Edison lost. And Thomas Edison was not a man who accepted losing. What happened next was ugly. Edison launched a campaign to convince the American public that AC electricity was deadly. And he didn't just write newspaper articles or give speeches. No, he went further than that. He staged public demonstrations. Imagine this. A crowd gathered in a park or a public square. Edison's men bring out a dog, a horse, sometimes even an elephant. They attach wires. They throw the switch. And the animal dies, right there, in front of everyone. Edison's message was clear: this is what Westinghouse electricity will do to you. He even helped design the first electric chair, specifically using AC current, just to associate Westinghouse technology with death. They called it getting Westinghoused. Can you imagine the kind of mind it takes to do something like that? To be so determined to win that you'd electrocute animals in front of crowds, just to destroy a competitor? It's chilling. But it's also a reminder that progress is never as clean or simple as we like to believe. Westinghouse fought back, of course. He hired brilliant engineers, including a quiet, eccentric immigrant from Serbia named Nikola Tesla, who held the patents for AC motors and systems. Together, they worked to prove that AC was not only safe, when used properly, but far superior to Edison's DC. The turning point came in 1893. That year, Chicago hosted the World's Columbian Exposition, a massive World's Fair celebrating the 400th anniversary of Columbus's arrival in the Americas. It was one of the biggest events of the century. Millions of people would attend. And someone had to light it up. Edison's company bid for the contract. So did Westinghouse. Westinghouse underbid Edison by a huge margin. He won the contract. And when the fair opened, it was breathtaking. 200,000 incandescent light bulbs glowed across the fairgrounds. People wandered through the White City, as they called it, staring up in wonder at buildings bathed in electric light. Many of them had never seen electric light before in their lives. It was like walking into the future. And it was all powered by Westinghouse AC system. The battle was over. AC had won. But even that wasn't the end of Edison's war. Because there was still the matter of patents. Edison held hundreds of them. And he wasn't about to let anyone use his ideas without paying for it, even if some of those ideas weren't entirely his to begin with. Throughout the 1880s and 1890s, Edison and his company filed lawsuit after lawsuit against anyone making or selling light bulbs. It didn't matter if you were a small inventor in your garage or a big company overseas. If Edison thought you were using his technology, he'd take you to court. And he usually won. Not always because he was right, but because he had more money and better lawyers. Other inventors were crushed under the weight of legal fees. Some went bankrupt. Some gave up entirely. One of the most tragic cases was William Sawyer and Alban Mann, two inventors who'd been working on incandescent bulbs around the same time as Edison. They had legitimate patents. They had working bulbs. But Edison tied them up in court for years. Sawyer died before the case was settled. Mann's company collapsed. This wasn't innovation. It was domination. And yet, here's the strange thing, history remembers Edison as the hero. Walk up to almost anyone on the street today and ask who invented the light bulb. They'll say Edison. Maybe they'll hesitate for a moment, sensing there's more to the story, but that's the name that comes to mind. Why? Because Edison understood something that the other inventors didn't. He understood narrative. He knew how to control the story. He gave interviews. He posed for photographs in his laboratory, surrounded by his inventions, looking every bit the lone genius. He made himself the face of the electric age. And in doing so, he wrote the other names out of history. Now, I want to pause here for a moment and ask you something. Does it bother you that the story you've always known, the story of Edison and the light bulb, isn't quite the whole truth? Or does it make sense, in a way? That the person who wins isn't always the one with the best idea, but the one who's best at convincing people the idea was theirs? It's not a comfortable thought. But it's one worth sitting with. Because this pattern, this war over who gets credit, who gets paid, who controls the future, didn't end with the light bulb. It's happened again and again, in every generation. The battles over radio, over the telephone, over the internet, over vaccines, over everything, really. Progress always comes with a fight. And the fight is rarely fair. By the early 1900s, the dust had started to settle. Edison's DC system was fading. AC was becoming the standard. Westinghouse was powering cities. The electric age was here, and it wasn't going anywhere. But here's the ironic twist. In 1892, Edison's company merged with another company to form General Electric, GE. And guess what? GE eventually adopted AC current. The very thing Edison had spent years fighting against became the foundation of his company's success. Edison himself stepped back from the day-to-day business. He moved on to other projects, motion pictures, mining, batteries. He remained famous, beloved even. When he died in 1931, President Hoover asked Americans to dim their lights for 1 minute in his honor. The whole country went dark, just for a moment, to remember the man who'd brought them light. Westinghouse, on the other hand, never quite got the same recognition. He died in 1914, still working, still inventing, but without the same fanfare. History was kinder to Edison. And yet, when you flip that light switch tonight, you're using Westinghouse system, not Edison's. Isn't that something? So what do we take away from all this? I think there's something quietly profound in this story, something that goes beyond inventors and patents and business wars. It's this: the things we rely on every single day, the things we don't even think about anymore, were once the center of someone's entire world. They were fought over, dreamed about, sacrificed for. That light bulb in your kitchen? Someone spent years of their life figuring out how to make it work. Someone else spent years fighting in court to control it. Fortunes were made and lost. Reputations were destroyed. Animals died. All for that little bit of light. And now? We barely notice it. We take it for granted. I'm not saying that's wrong. That's just what it means to live in the future someone else built. We inherit their victories and their compromises, and we move forward. But every now and then, I think it's worth stopping, flipping that switch, and remembering that the glow you see is the end of a long, complicated, human story. A story of brilliance and cruelty, of innovation and greed, of collaboration and betrayal. A story that reminds us that progress is never just about the idea. It's about who controls it, who profits from it, and who gets forgotten along the way. So tonight, when you turn off the lights before bed, take a moment. Think about all the people whose names you'll never know, who helped make that simple act possible. And, just maybe, wonder what battles are being fought right now, in boardrooms and courtrooms and laboratories, over the things we'll take for granted 50 years from now. The light bulb wasn't just invented, it was fought for. And in a way, that makes it mean something more.